flying in from Australia 2 days ago. I don't have USD. But we have banks, we have, you can go to a bank, get a bank account created for you, give them the ID, you take loans, etc., etc. But I think if you take this and try and build such an experience as an app, you run into a lot of complications because money is not really meant to be native to the world that we live in today. So for example, you could maybe build like a Next.js app with Stripe, and you could accept payments from everyone, but then you lose like 3%, and you can only do certain amounts of payments from certain countries, certain participants couldn't play, and then some people could actually withdraw the money and say they got scammed and kind of ruin the whole game. In the process, if you're accepting money from two parties, you're becoming money transmitter by the state, so you couldn't even build this game unless you go through the full legal process. And then the third point, as we saw, I didn't even have to pay the money because, well, I could have just given you anything and you're trusting me, you didn't give me any money. But if you did, I would have held that and then kind of robbed that from you because there's no agreement with me to actually give that back to you. And as a layer on top of that, if we think about building apps for agents, this becomes even harder. And this is kind of what I'm saying of why it's becoming more and more obvious that stablecoins are actually so valuable, where agents can't create a bank account, they don't necessarily know if the money landed or if the person's going to take that money back, and they don't know the rules of the games or the systems that they're playing before they participate. So, imagine if there was a better way to do things, and that's kind of my hint at what Monad enables as a blockchain solution, and we'll talk about what Monad actually is now. So, I spoke to a few of you before the presentation, and yeah, I think there's different levels of experience of what blockchain and stablecoins are. So, starting from a super basic point of view, Monad is a layer 1 blockchain, which allows you to move money on this kind of new financial rails. So, rather than moving money from one bank account to another, you create accounts on the blockchain, which has your funds in different currencies, like stablecoins, for example. And you move money from one account to another on the blockchain. And it's essentially replacing what we have today as financial rails if they were open to everybody on a global scale and kind of natively built for the era of the internet and especially relevant for AI agents today. Some other points, I think the second one's kind of boring, but also important, is that finality of the transaction happens within 600 milliseconds, so less than a second, which is actually what allows part of Rain's product is how it works under the hood.
Sorry to interrupt real quick. If we could be respectful of the speaker, if we have side conversation, if you don't mind taking a step back to the room towards the front of the lobby, we appreciate it. Thank you. Back to you.
Yeah, no worries. And that's actually what enables part of Rain's tech stack is, okay, Visa gives you a small window of time to say, does this person have enough money and have they actually paid? So Monad has 300 millisecond block time, which allows you to first check, hey, does this person actually have money? And then make that transaction within 300 milliseconds before the kind of merchant even realizes that's happening under the hood. And then the third one is probably the most interesting, where money becomes programmable. It becomes something that you can just do whatever you want with inside of code. So anything you can imagine and can write in code, you can now do with your money. So you can do things like create savings accounts or do borrowing and lending. You can trade for whatever coins or tokenize assets like tokenized stocks, for example. And really it brings the kind of financial world that we take for granted onto a global platform that anybody can access with an internet connection. And yeah, I thought now is a good time, as I kind of mentioned at the start, this is a little dated. Claude let me down here, but as of April, which is a few months ago now, but agents are already paying each other. So there's a primitive called X402, which will be on our one-pager for the builders today, where you can actually pay or send money as part of an HTTP request. So you can request some resources like some data or something like that from a merchant, and you can send like kind of microtransactions of less than 30 cents or less than 1 cent, however many you want, as part of that request. And over 165 million of these agent transactions happened as of 3 months ago. So I just wanted to dive in a little bit. I won't ramble too long before you guys go over to lunch, but I just wanted to make some comparisons of where the financial rails are today to where they actually exist on Mod, for example, or any modern blockchain. So today you would have to go to a bank, give your ID, fill out a bunch of forms, wait a couple of days, and then you finally have your account. And then maybe you can make a sub-account on that account for your agents to have scope permissions with. But they can't really spend it for everything, unlike you would on a RAIN card, we have stable points, for example. Whereas today, as I'll show you shortly, you can generate an account in milliseconds. You just run one line of code to create a key pair, and you have your own private bank account. And you can use this, you can do this for free. It's just running code. You can create one for yourself, or you can create one for your agent, or you can kind of mimic this structure where you create one for yourself and then sub-accounts for your agents, because you can just write that in code. And then, payments are also just code. It's just a single function call of transfer money to this other person. And that happens, like I said, within 300 milliseconds and then 600 milliseconds for that final finale. To compare that today to, if you use like a Amex card or something like that, first you're going to rob the fee from the merchant of like 2%. It's going to wait a couple of days, and that's actually reversible for however many days you've agreed with your card provider. Which I'll say that's necessarily not a good thing. It could be a bad thing. Maybe you get scammed and you want to take the money back. So there's a bit of a trade-off that you're making here. And the final thing that I think is most important is that code lets you make whatever you want with your money. It's often referred to as kind of Lego blocks, where you have like the foundations of the blockchain, and then you have the stable coins, then you have the transferring, then you have lending, swapping, investing, whatever you want. And you can really just write anything that you want to do with your money into code. And here's some real examples. So Monad is an EVM compatible blockchain where you write Solidity. If you don't know, that's a smart contract programming language where you can create smart contracts for accounts. You can call pay functions or transfer functions to send stuff like stablecoins to and from different addresses. And you can put that into DeFi if you want to do stuff like saving and lending or transferring or swapping into different assets. And I think this is actually super relevant recently, is typically you would treat crypto as like, okay, I have it. I went through this like really brutal, painful process to set up my seed phrase and my wallet. And now I have this weird like 12-well notepad in my desk that hopefully I don't lose. And then I would go to like a coffee shop and be like, hey, here's my stable coins. And they'd probably be like, what the fuck even is this? Like, I don't know what that is. So that's really where RAIN comes in, is bringing this kind of new financial rails for the internet and transferring that into kind of a two-part solution where you can actually spend it on using real money that the merchants care about and actually want and store. But under the hood, it's using this kind of futuristic, futuristic financial rails, where it's open to anybody to participate. And one of the options you can do that on is Monad. So if you're hoping to kind of kill two birds with one stone today with your projects, then just use the RAIN card and have the underlying assets stored on the Monad blockchain. That's actually what I have in my RAIN card in my wallet, which I'm not going to show because I don't want you to steal my money. All right, so now the moment of truth of my demo actually works. So we played the split or steal game with two humans, and we kind of went through the problems of why that's not really suitable for today's modern world of the internet and AI agents. So I wanted to see if I could provide code, build this with Fable last night, if we can create accounts, transfer money, and participate in games using AI agents. So I pray that this demo works. So here, instead of two humans, we have two agents, Vex and Kite. And as you can see, they've just created and loaded their wallets. And these are actually real transactions on Monad. So once they've loaded their wallets, they're actually going to put it into this escrow in the middle here. I swear this is not fake, that was just really good timing. And that is a real transaction going into a smart contract. And now they're going to actually begin negotiating. So Vex is going to vote for split. Sorry, Guide is going to vote for split. Vex is going to pretend to vote for split, I'm pretty sure. Vex is coded to be like a deceitful one. So we have split from Kite, and Vex is going to steal the full pot. So this is just a demo of creating accounts, transferring money, and this is a really good showcase because one mon is a couple of cents, which is something that you couldn't do. This is a microtransaction. You couldn't even really build this if you tried with something like Stripe, for example. So yeah, I vibe coded this in like 10 minutes last night, just as a showcase of what you can do. Like I said, it's a great time to be a builder, build something ambitious. And if you wanted to integrate Rain into this, for example, you could say, have your agent as kind of a sub-account of the card that you control, for example, or something like that. And the underlying transactions occur on the Monad blockchain. So a couple more slides, and then I promise I will shut up. So yeah, this is not the real code, but this is some example pseudocode of what this game might look like on a smart contract deployed on Monad. So Monad you can really think of as just a hosting platform for your financial backend rails. So you can write up any code that you want and deploy it onto Monad, and Monad will handle moving and transferring the money and creating the accounts and contracts for you. Okay, so the prize for, I probably should have put a slide before this. There is a separate Monad track for best use of Monad. And like I said, if you want to kill two birds with one stone, it's very simple. You just use Rain and use the Monad blockchain under the hood for the actual transfers, which Rain supports. So if you win the Monad track, you'll win a pretty juicy Mac Mini that I have on my desk, which will go to the Monad office tomorrow. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring it today, but that's okay. And you'll also get access to work in the Monad studio, which is kind of down the block for 6 months. It's a fun space to be in. Very, very big space of Monad team and Monad ecosystem team, and it's just a great intersection of builders, finance and crypto, and programmable money. All right, what am I looking for? Really, you can take this as advice, but I think just pick something that you think is interesting, that you think is fun, that you'll want to spend your time on and passionate about. I think the criteria here is pretty obvious. Like, transactions should be on Monad. We have a test net with fake money. You can get fake money for free from our faucet. So you'll have no problems. If you do, then I can send you some fake money as well. The chain, yeah, it would be nice if it showcased the kind of unique offerings that Monad as a chain has, like fast finality and enabling microtransactions, for example. And then, yeah, like I said, the intersection of AI and blockchain is super exciting. So obviously use agents, that's what we're here for. And yeah, it doesn't have to be polished. Like, we only have, what, 8 hours today and then a couple hours tomorrow. So something weird but cool is much better than something that's polished, beautiful front end or anything like that. I think I already told that. And then, yeah, start fresh is preferred. Like, you can bring an existing project, but I think it's preferred if you start a fresh project for this hackathon specifically. Ideally, you host it on Vercel or something like that we can easily test when we're doing the judging process. A public repo so we can view the code, so we know you didn't start it 18 months ago and somehow cooked it up this weekend. And then, yeah, be ready to demo. Just have a fun presentation and work on something you're passionate about. And that's it.